By 1945, World War II had raged for 6 long years, leaving much of the world in ruins. In the Pacific theater, the war between the United States and Japan had reached a devastating stalemate. After years of brutal fighting across islands in the Pacific, Japan was severely weakened, yet its military leaders showed no signs of surrender. The battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa demonstrated Japan's willingness to fight to the death, with kamikaze pilots and soldiers fighting with fierce determination. Faced with the prospect of a costly invasion of Japan, the US sought a decisive end to the war. Behind the scenes, scientists in America had been working on a secret weapon that they believed could change the course of history: the atomic bomb. The development of the atomic bomb began in 1939 when Albert Einstein and other scientists warned President Franklin D. Roosevelt about Nazi Germany's interest in nuclear fission. This led to the creation of the Manhattan Project, a top-secret research program dedicated to building the first atomic weapon. Under the guidance of physicist J. Robert Oppenheimer, a team of brilliant scientists gathered in Los Alamos, New Mexico, to design and test the bomb. After years of work, their efforts culminated in the successful detonation of the world's first atomic bomb in July 1945, during the Trinity test. At the same time, the United States debated how to bring an end to the war with Japan. President Harry S. Truman, who had taken office after Roosevelt's death, faced a critical decision. Should the US use this new, terrifying weapon? Truman and his advisors believed that an invasion of Japan could result in hundreds of thousands of American casualties and even more Japanese deaths. The atomic bomb, they reasoned, could force Japan to surrender without the need for such a bloody invasion. On August 6, 1945, the US made its decision. A B-29 bomber named Enola Gay took off from an airbase in the Pacific, carrying a 10,000-pound uranium bomb known as Little Boy. The target, the city of Hiroshima, a major military hub with a civilian population of over 350,000 people. At 8:15 a.m., the bomb was dropped from the plane and detonated approximately 2,000 feet above the city. In an instant, a blinding flash of light lit up the sky, followed by a powerful shockwave that flattened buildings and ignited massive fires. The initial blast killed an estimated 70,000 to 80,000 people instantly. Tens of thousands more would die in the following days and weeks from burns, radiation sickness, and injuries. Hiroshima was reduced to a smoldering wasteland, with nearly 70% of its buildings destroyed. Survivors, known as hibakusha, would describe horrific scenes: people with skin hanging from their bodies, others desperately searching for water, and entire families wiped out in an instant. The full magnitude of the destruction was unlike anything the world had ever seen. Despite the overwhelming devastation in Hiroshima, Japan did not immediately surrender. 3 days later, on August 9, 1945, the US dropped a second atomic bomb, this time on the city of Nagasaki. This bomb, known as Fat Man, was a plutonium device even more powerful than the one used in Hiroshima. Nagasaki was not the original target. The city of Kokura was initially chosen, but cloud cover forced the crew to divert to Nagasaki. At 11:02 a.m., Fat Man was dropped, exploding with a force of 22 kilotons. The geography of Nagasaki, with its hills and valleys, limited the destruction somewhat compared to Hiroshima. Nevertheless, the bomb killed approximately 40,000 people instantly, with tens of thousands more dying in the weeks and months that followed. By this point, Japan was in utter shock. The combined force of the two atomic bombs, coupled with the Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan on August 8, broke the resolve of Japan's leaders. Faced with the unimaginable destruction of their cities and the threat of more atomic bombs, they knew they could no longer continue the war. On August 15, 1945, Japanese Emperor Hirohito addressed the nation in a radio broadcast, announcing Japan's unconditional surrender. It was the first time the Japanese people had ever heard their emperor's voice. In his speech, Hirohito referred to the new and most cruel bomb as one of the main reasons for Japan's surrender. The formal signing of the surrender took place on September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri, officially ending World War II. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki not only brought an end to the war, but also marked the beginning of a new and terrifying era, one defined by the power of nuclear weapons. The world had changed forever. The aftermath of the bombings left deep scars on the survivors and the cities themselves. In the years that followed, the people of Hiroshima and Nagasaki faced the long-term effects of radiation exposure, including cancer and genetic damage. Generations of survivors would bear the physical and emotional burden of what had occurred. Globally, the bombings sparked a fierce debate over the ethics of using nuclear weapons. Some argued that the bombings were necessary to bring a swift end to the war and save countless lives on both sides. Others condemned the attacks as unnecessary and inhumane, given the massive civilian toll. The bombings also set the stage for the Cold War, as the United States and the Soviet Union embarked on a nuclear arms race, each side determined to outdo the other in terms of destructive power. The shadow of nuclear weapons has loomed over the world ever since, with many fearing the potential for future nuclear conflict. Today, Hiroshima and Nagasaki serve as symbols of both the horrors of war and the importance of peace. Memorials and museums in both cities remind the world of the devastating power of atomic weapons and the need to prevent such destruction from ever happening again. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were unprecedented events that forever changed the course of history. They brought an end to the deadliest conflict the world had ever seen, but also ushered in the nuclear age, an era of great fear and immense power. As we reflect on the bombings, it's important to remember the human cost: hundreds of thousands of lives lost, cities wiped out, and generations affected by the aftermath. The legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki continues to shape our understanding of war, peace, and the fragile balance of power in the world today.